Gavin Bell, welcome to the Real Wealth Podcast. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure, and I'm really looking forward to this discussion. There's a lot of ground to cover in terms of your business journey and building Yatter and the recent exit from that. That's all really good stuff. But where I want to start is, what led you into entrepreneurship specifically and building your own business?
Yeah, well, I grew up in the Shetland Islands, so I think there was probably a bit of boredom up there when you're sort of in your teenage years. So I think I built my first website when I was 14. We were selling glass chess sets and I was drop shipping stuff, and before drop shipping was cool.
Was that something that a family member was making them, or you just seen them?
No, it was literally just a case of going on Google, find out what drop shipping was, found out that people were selling these chess sets on eBay. And I set up a terrible website back then doing that, and every time we went on a family holiday I'd buy all the fake Gucci belts and take them home and sell them on eBay as well. So I think back when I was 14, I don't come from a family of entrepreneurs or business people, so I don't know where it came from, just a sort of
a drive within
something
you.
within me.
Were you looking for something more than Shetland had to offer?
Shetland's you've got a few choices when you're in Shetland. It's going to fishing, going to oil and gas, or move down south, which we call it, to Glasgow, Edinburgh, Aberdeen, to go to university. And I was never academic, I didn't enjoy school, so the thought of going to university and doing more education didn't appeal to me at all. So again, online, looking at what my options. I knew business was always the thing that I wanted to do. Didn't know how you go about doing it. But I found a year-long course called the Peter Jones Enterprise Academy in Manchester.
Okay, wow, yeah.
And that was basically a year-long course where you go with a business idea, and when you're learning about marketing, you're actually marketing that business. And that sort of gave me that, kind of got me off the islands at 18, gave me that first real experience of business, going into networking events, shaking hands.
Yeah.
And that first business down there was a total failure, but that sort of gave me
the spark of interest.
The spark of what a real business is, not just a website from my bedroom.
I guess it's an interesting generational shift as well, because if you had lived somewhere more remote like Shetlands in generations gone by, it wouldn't have been as easy to access the world of opportunity and really have a clear view of what's available out there. The internet changed all that radically, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's quite funny. Back then I thought, as a lot of young people in Shetland do, Shetland's boring, there's nothing to do here.
Yeah.
Now when I go back, I look at Shetland and I go, there's so much opportunity here. Because
you're looking at it through different eyes.
Yeah, people are so laid back that the barrier to entry for a good business up there is so low. And so every time I go back, I was there last week, it's just so much opportunity.
Yeah.
And sort of a side tangent, but I went to Iceland last year, or a couple of years ago on my honeymoon, and I was so inspired by the place because it's an island, small population, similar to Shetland, in some regards, but they just take advantage of the island that they've got. So like the lava and the volcanoes is turned into heating and all this sort of stuff. And again, I look at Shetland and I go,
there's opportunity.
So much you could be doing there. Yeah.
I mean, I've heard of a lot of entrepreneurs going, making specific trips to places like the US, knowing that is, usually at the forefront of innovation, just to come back with some ideas. And, I've heard of people make millions on relatively simple ideas that are implemented in the US, but for whatever reason aren't in the UK.
Yeah.
These trips can really open your eyes to what's possible.
100%. Every year I always make sure I get a conference in the States, because the speakers, the positive energy that's over there.
Oh yeah.
And you come back, you're buzzing. And that lasts you a few months.
It'll keep you going.
It'll keep you going for a few months. So yeah, every year a trip to America is a must for me.
You don't realise how negative we are as a nation until you've spent some time in the US and you just see the inherent optimism of those guys and the entrepreneurial flair that's over there is incredible.
Yeah, and they all want each other to succeed over there. Over here there's definitely an element of, look at the government. I don't know if we're going political in this, but there's there's anti-wealth, anti-business sentiment in the States. It's the opposite. So
yeah, they're trying to encourage it, and you look at our political landscape versus what they have potentially down the road now with Trump and Elon Musk and the Doge. All of that sort of stuff seems exactly the way that the UK needs to go. But we don't have any political party that's anywhere near that sort of focus on business and wealth and creating wealth for the UK. Ultimately, Trump, love him or hate him, you may not like all of his policies, but he's focused on making America better.
Yeah.
Utilising their resources to get the most out of it and making sure that the rest of the world is not profiteering from the capabilities within the US. Why wouldn't you want to do that? Especially with the UK now having, removed itself from Europe with Brexit. It's like now more than ever we have to be able to, work off our own back and create something for the UK. And thousands and thousands of millionaires are leaving the country every year. I've talked about this in a podcast before. It was over 10,000 millionaires left the UK last year. And you say, okay, well, it's just the rich people. No, it's the entrepreneurs. It's the guys that are building things, that are creating wealth, that are leaving because the tax system is killing them. It's killing the nation and the growth. So, it's a really important area and it's hard not to go there. Everybody I know that's done well in business is now having that thought of, right, it's maybe time to start looking at leaving the UK.
100%. Look at a number of people have moved to Dubai or are actively considering it. Yes. And to mention your point on the millionaires leaving, the thing that proves this point is that the majority of the people on the left would probably go, good, we don't want them here.
Exactly, yeah.
Whereas they don't realise the value that those people actually bring to the economy.
Well, I was listening to the Labour budget and, it was all driven on the fact that public infrastructure was going to bring growth to the UK, and I'm like, you've got to be fucking kidding me. It's just insane. But that's the path they're going down just now, and it doesn't seem like there's any movement on it. So, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, our businesses are firmly rooted in the UK. It's not the right time for us, but if it was, it'd be hard not to be looking seriously at it. Tax structures and incentives in places like Dubai are, very, very interesting. So, yeah, not necessarily intending on going political, but it's hard to avoid, especially when you're talking about business, because it is so hard, and no other group in business has been targeted quite so much by the Scottish government as landlords and people in the property industry. Anyway, back to your kind of first foray into entrepreneurship and kind of, that Peter Jones year-long. What was the business idea that didn't work?
The business idea I went down with was like a corporate well-being business. Right. So the basic premise of it was to put personal trainers, nutritionists into corporates to run sessions with members of the staff to improve employee health, which I actually think there's probably some legs in that idea.
The concept, for sure.
But the model I used, and I didn't have a clue what I was doing, to be honest. And that was actually it was the step that got me into marketing, because through that business what I did was I created a huge number of contacts with personal trainers, nutritionists, and I just realised that all of these guys were dying for more work. They're coming to me, this guy that knew nothing, that was saying, I might be able to get you into a corporate, like desperate to get another couple hours in their week. And when I looked at their marketing, it's like, the stuff that they were posting, if they were posting anything, was terrible. Yeah. And I guess I just knew that from being a young guy that used social media. It wasn't compelling. So I kind of went to myself, well, there's an opportunity there to go and help these guys get work and help them with their marketing. Yeah. And that would have been maybe 8 or 9 years ago. Started doing that. And as I started to do that, I just got more and more customers, small clients, mainly in and around Edinburgh. I'd moved up to Edinburgh by that point. And
so at that time, were you running the marketing for them? Were you running the social media and ads?
Yeah. So it started off as pure social media management. So we were posting on people's Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn for them. And it was one client then said to me, could you help me with ads, like Facebook ads? And I was going, no, I have no idea how to do this, but sure, let's give it a try. And gave it a try. They were they were trying to sell tickets for an event, and we happened to do really, really well. And this was back in the day in Facebook ads, you didn't even have to try.
Yeah.
You could just put anything up.
The algorithm was helpful.
Yeah, and it worked, and it was so cheap.
Yeah.
So it worked, and I was going, right, this is interesting, because when I was doing social media management, you're not charging a lot. The value that you bring, it's not much value that you bring because I posted a few posts this week.
Yeah.
Whereas when it was advertising, it was you've spent X and you've made Y.
The return of investment is very clear.
Exactly. And I'm going, if I'm making somebody money, why would they ever leave me?
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I was like, right, I'm going all in on learning how to become the best at ads.
Yeah.
And then, so that would have been, like I say, probably 6-7 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And my focus at that point was to become the guy, the Facebook ads guy in the UK. Nobody really owned that.
Specifically within fitness, or were you thinking more broad at
By that point, it was sort of broad.
Okay.
So I went down a big personal branding route of making videos, vlogging, blogging, personal brand website, speaking on stages, and that sort of got me like a coaching consulting business. So we started selling courses. I didn't like the course model because it's one and done.
Mm-hmm.
So we sort of transitioned that into a membership model.
Yeah.
And that would take us up to about COVID, and that business did really, really well during COVID. But I just got sick of it because the business model is just churning out content all day, every day. And
it's intense.
Yeah, if you're not doing that, then people leave. And I found it was, we were charging $49 a month. So that's 38 quid. And then you minus your VAT, and then, people...
Yeah, you have to be doing serious numbers, and the level of time that you're spending to put the content out has to be justified in terms of return, which only comes from volume of clients.
Massive scale.
And client retention as well is the major factor there.
So you need massive scale to make it work. And we're basically running ads, getting people in at break even, and then finding, you're having to pay members of staff to go and chase people that cards failed and it was a nightmare, to be honest. Well, it was a good business. It got, consistent, decent income, but not anywhere near the scale that I wanted to grow business.
It's a really interesting one because, it's not too far removed from, how our Real Property Scotland business started. And it was, after Laurie and I had built our portfolio to over 200 properties at that point, we thought, okay, well, we've learned quite a bit here, so we can probably teach others how to do it. Obviously at a time where the regulations were getting pretty tough for landlords, it was important to do it professionally, do it the right way. So Real Property Scotland started as an educational course. People would come, spend 4 days with us, and learn everything they needed to do. Two major problems with that. One was they leave bamboozled with the level of information we'd thrown at them in 4 days, and the second was the biggest challenge in them accelerating their journey thereafter was they couldn't find the deals, the below market value deals to start building a buy-to-let portfolio, and that was the kind of key component that was missing. So we transitioned our model to then say, okay, well, it's more of a annual membership thing, so you pay for access to all of our education, which is on the platform now. But the main thing that we're providing for most clients is results. So, we will source you at least at our lowest level 2 below market value deals in the year that meet your criteria, all the way up to our consultancy clients who are paying us serious amounts of money in the year to grow a significant portfolio of 10 plus. And the benefit of that model versus the original training is, as you say, you're just constantly having to get the next pool of people, the next pool of people, the next pool of people, as opposed to bringing on clients that you can retain in the long term and help them see the value, because there's a tangible ROI calculation at the end of the year. You paid us this much to work with us, here's the equity you've created in your business, your net cash flow. It just works so much better. And equally, I had John Hamilton on the podcast a little while ago. You may be familiar with him. He runs the Young and Lazy network, and he was talking about his model, again very similar, educational based, client support based, monthly fees that they charge for clients with the aim to help them through the business journey and retain them in the long term. Now, obviously, depending on the level of fees you can charge and the level of value you can add, is going to determine whether or not that business is going to be interesting. You know,
I mean, the model itself is great. You know, we've got clients on membership models. One of my first clients was a guy called Scott Devine, who runs Scott's bass lessons. If you're a bass guitar player, you'll know who this guy is. And he's massive on
you do a bit of guitaring yourself, do you not?
Yeah, I'm a traditional guitarist.
Okay, cool.
So granny music is my wife likes
but,
to call
but that's pretty complicated stuff to play a lot of times, you know?
Yeah, it's I enjoy it. I was at a trad gig last night, Transatlantic Sessions in Perth.
Okay.
But anyway, this guy, so he's got millions of followers on YouTube, and he created a membership site by accident, and now he's got like tens of thousands of members, and the business is just incredible. Amazing business. So the membership model is great. The problem with a membership model in the marketing world is it's so competitive that to acquire customers profitably is near enough impossible unless you're holding those guys for over a year. So membership model, amazing. Membership model in the marketing world, really tough.
Yeah, that's I guess to the level being our challenge with it is we're fortunate in a sense that we do have the potential to retain clients long term. So when we acquire a client, we work very hard to make sure they don't leave us. And because we have the continual generation of revenue through selling deals to clients, then we can monetize a client very highly over a long period of time. So it kind of works. We've not spent anything acquiring clients. It's all been kind of through referrals and organic social media. Every time we've tried to put spend behind it, it's not worked. Or it brings us, because we're not looking for, a lot of these property training courses will be looking for guys who don't really have any money. They're quite young or at the early stages, and okay, they can afford the course, but then they can't afford to scale a business after it without raising a whole bunch of cash. We're generally looking for people who are ready to invest, who have funds that want to make active progress. So it's been difficult for us, and we do need to go back to it because we're, as I said, we're fortunate because we don't need a lot of clients to generate really good revenue, but there always becomes a limit where your growth is going to be determinant on that. So I fully get where you're coming from, and a lot of the training, the true training model guys are running these big events every month just to try and kind of feed the pipeline, and that's never been us. We never wanted to be an events-based business, So you can see what the challenges are with that model, and certainly scaling it in the long term. Because the other thing we found as well is what might work to generate client leads this month probably won't work next month, and you need to keep we obviously do quite, and we'll get onto Yatter in a bit more detail, but we obviously do work with you guys on the We Buy Home Scotland side of things, where we're generating, and that is all market and spend, and we understand how to convert that into revenue very, very easily. The return on investment is awesome for that. That's easy. This side of it in client acquisition, we've never really been able to make it work. So it remains still a challenge, but I can understand why you started with that model and then kind of maybe transitioned away from it.
Yeah, I mean, it was a case of going. So people are spending $49 a month with me. They're staying a few months. So the lifetime value of that customer is, call it 300 quid.
Yeah.
And the amount of work that has to go into that £300 to acquire them, keep them happy, try and get them results. And I found that actually one of the biggest problems with that model is because it's a low price point, you get people that aren't high quality.
Yeah.
And I'm teaching them everything they need to know, but they don't have a good business. And so everything they need to know is not going to work. Yeah. And so I thought, well, why don't we just do it for people? And I had done that in the past, but I'm not great with clients personally. No. So that's why I went down the course in the membership model. Originally, I didn't want to have lots and lots of clients. So I went, right, if we're going to, actually another problem with that membership model is that business is then based on my name.
Yeah.
Because I'm the person that's behind the camera.
And it does need to be a bit of that with the whole, I'm coming to you because I value your position in the market and your experience. And when you start pushing them off to other people, that's where things start going.
Yeah, I built a personal brand. I was making videos. That's where people were coming from.
Yeah.
And then they wanted me inside the academy. So, I'm looking at all those different factors going, this vehicle for me as an entrepreneur is not the most highly leveraged vehicle that I could be in.
Yeah.
So I need something that gives me more leverage. And that's basically when I made the decision to go, let's cut ties with the courses and the consulting, the personal brand, the speaking, all of that stuff that I was doing that was taking up so much time. I go, let's build a business that we can build, scale it, sell it.
Yeah.
And so went through the process of killing all. We didn't actually kill it. We still use it for like training and.
Well, I was going to ask that because the natural thing would be to say, okay, well, let's put it on an online platform. It's an educational platform.
Yep.
That can be a baseline business coming in every month of people just paying for access to that. But there is an argument that it might be counterintuitive to trying to scale, where you're physically doing it for people, and over here you're teaching them to do it themselves.
Yeah, so we use it for internal training now.
Yeah.
So anybody that joins the team, they can go through all of that. And then I know at least they understand although it's sort of outdated now, they understand the philosophy for where it all comes from. But yeah, so around 3 years ago, we went through a big branding process with an agency, came up with the brand Yatter, and sort of opened the doors to we're an agency providing marketing services now.
What was the branding philosophy behind Yatter? Because it does stick out actually.
Yeah,
as a brand.
There's a great book that I read a long time ago called The 7-Day Startup, and in there there's a naming. So basically, the premise of the book is create a business in 7 days, and one of the days is choose your name. And I remember there's a table in there on what a business name should be.
Yeah.
And I can't remember all the different things, but it was it's like, is it memorable? Is it short? Can you say it easily? Does it look okay when it's written down? I basically just went through that, and I sort of sent this agency, the guy that I was working with, some ideas on what I liked and what sounded good, and he presented back to me some different names, and Yatter was the one I was like, yeah, I like it. It sort of has connotations for speaking and social and that sort of thing. It's short, it sounds kind of startup-y. Because my first business name was Blue Cliff Media. It's like the most boring name in the world. So I wanted something short and
snappy. No, that ticks the boxes. It's quite interesting though, at the earlier start of that journey that you went to a marketing agency to go through the branding exercise, because a lot of people would just say, well, I'm at the start, I'll just figure it out myself, rather than was there any thinking behind that, or because it's an investment, right? You want to get it right.
Yeah, I think it was about 10 grand we spent, and I think it was a case of I've had different businesses and models for the last 5 or 6 years. We're going to do it properly now, and if we're going to do it properly, it's almost like you have to. It's like if you give somebody something for free, they don't buy into it as much as if they pay for it.
Yeah.
If you come to an event for free, you might pay some attention. If you pay 10 grand for that same event, you're taking action. So it's almost like a commitment to myself. We're spending this money, we're building a brand, we're building it to sell, we're doing things properly. And it was worth every penny.
It's really interesting that from the start, because before we started the podcast, we were having a bit of discussions about this whole, build it as a lifestyle business or build it to sell it, but you seem pretty clear that from the start you were building it to sell it.
Yeah, so I'd had the courses, the consulting, all of that stuff in the past. That was definitely a lifestyle business. Generated nice money, but it was all my name. No value for anyone to come and buy that. And so I knew from running that lifestyle business that I wanted something bigger and better. And I think I come back to the word of leverage. As an entrepreneur, I'm always thinking, what's the highest leverage activities I can be spending my time on,
Yeah.
but also what's the highest leverage business model
Mm.
that I could be spending my time on. And so I think building, scaling, selling a business as an entrepreneur or a route to wealth is one of the highest leverage things you can do.
Yeah.
Now there's different options. You generate cash, put that into property, just do that for your whole life.
Yeah. I mean, there's different elements to why that's so true, though. One is, in terms of how quickly business has the potential to scale, particularly in the digital age. It's pretty incredible how quickly value can be created and wealth can be created. But also in terms of, a tax perspective, you can be making £1 million a year, but if you want to take that money out of the business, you're going to be paying most of it in tax, versus the sale of a business, which is going to be significantly less tax. So you get to retain a lot more of the wealth than you would otherwise. So you can see why the strategy would be there from the start, for sure.
Yeah, and there's a great book. It's called Built to Sell by, I think it's John Warlow.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing book. I read that back at the start, and it's quite good because the book is written as a sort of story, but the story is of an agency.
Yeah.
And so I basically just copied that book. And from day one, everything that we did was
based on
building the business to sell. So a sort of key example from that would be, rather than just saying we're an agency, we do everything, if you need help, inquire with us. It's we're an agency, we do Facebook ads, and here's our set process that we run through.
Yeah.
It's been tested, it's proven. We've got case studies to show it. There's set pricing, so that every single part of that business becomes systemized. It's a checklist on the back end. It's all process driven.
Yeah.
So you can essentially, and we've not got to this point, but you want to get to a point where you could bring anybody in, and they could just run through the process, the system, and they don't need to have experience. We do still are at a point where we have to hire marketing people that have been there and done it. Mm-hmm. But the sort of dream is a business where people can slot in regardless of their experience, because your system is set up so well.
Yeah, and that really inherently becomes the value you can create in a business, where it becomes predictable and repeatable. And we were talking about this in the office the other day, because a lot of these thoughts are going through our mind just now. And there's an example Patrick Bet-David gives about his business. Yep. And he was at a point where he was ready to sell the business, and he was told he'd maybe be looking at a 4 or 5 times multiplier of his 10 mil annual EBITDA, and he was like, I'm not happy with it. And the question to these I think it's private equity firm that we're looking at it is, why is it only a 4 to 5 time multiplier? What would make it a 20 times multiplier? What would make the difference? And they said, well, the companies that we're looking at that level they have their own system, but not only their own system, they've developed everything internally. So you're not dealing with companies that, we've got our online education platform, it's through Kajabi, we don't own that, we just rent it. Like, look at all of the different softwares we're using in a business, it's all rented, versus, these businesses that have created their own unique platform that gives them a USP and an advantage. And he got a $10 million investment and went and built his own system, and he ended up selling for something like 350 mil. Oh. So it was just like this massive accelerator, because he realised that his business was performing really well, but to take it to the next level is owning all the shit that runs your business and having it built in a proprietary way to accelerate sales. It was incredible. And I think there was an example of this I was reading about the other day. Knowing you were coming in, I was kind of looking at some marketing agency stuff, and the guy called David Moore that had 24/7 Real Media, he sold out in 2007 for like 670 million. And his business was started in the 90s, in 95, so he'd been through the dot-com bust. And a lot of his success and the price that he got in that business was attributed to the fact that he'd ploughed huge amounts of money into developing his own proprietary marketing platform. I think it was Open Ad Stream or whatever it was. But, the incredible value that can be built when you own your own ship.
Yeah.
So that's firmly in our mind just now in terms of what we're looking at going forward.
Yeah, I think you also need to think about in that respect, who is likely to buy you, and what are they looking for.
Yeah.
As well. So if you, I can't name him, but I was speaking to somebody who was in the property space, and they'd built up this massive portfolio, and their goal when they first started was one day they'd sell it and retire, and it was great. They actually got to that sort of point in their life, and nobody wanted to buy it because they'd built this big portfolio of crap that nobody actually wanted.
100%. It's one of the few businesses that it really doesn't apply to. But building a property business like our 200 properties cash flows very nicely. One, there's few people that could buy that in a single transaction. There's a few people that would want to because they might like that stock but they don't like that stock. It's such a personal thing.
Yeah.
The reason why we're able to scale our portfolio so quickly is because we buy portfolios from people who want to exit and can't find anyone else to buy them, so we can buy it for 25% less than what the properties are cumulatively worth. Because when you've got a property portfolio that's sizable, it's not like you can just sell it in the open market because it's tenanted. And if you are having to get rid of all your tenants and there's a lot of cash flow bleed, and it's not a business that you scale to necessarily exit. For us, everything's done through a trust. So, it's built for generational wealth. It's built to pass on to the kids. And there'll always be times where we sell some properties and buy some new ones. And it's just a business model that doesn't really work for that purpose.
Yeah, but I think the lesson still applies in which, when you're building a business to sell, you need to know who's likely to buy it.
Yeah.
And what do they want. So one of the things that I sort of came across was in our conversations when we were coming to sell was, so what happens is if you're a business under 1-2 million EBITDA, you might get a multiple of 3 to 6.
Yeah.
These rough figures, obviously. If you're a business that's maybe 10 plus mil, then you might get a 6 to 12 times multiple.
Yeah.
So you get a lot of people that are actually just taking all these businesses, not really caring what happens with them,
Consolidating
them, and then get a higher multiple on the other end.
Yeah.
So those guys, they don't actually really care about things like the software and the IP. They just want the revenue, so they can revenue profit EBITDA. Whereas you might get an agency that's trying to grow and do specific things that needs a piece of software, and then they might go and give you a 10, 12 plus multiple because that piece of software is more valuable to them than anything else.
Yeah.
So thinking about the end in mind, and that's what I tried to do in the early days, was what is it that we're trying to do, sell? Who is it that's likely to buy us? Probably another agency. What do they want? Okay, well let's build that. Map it out.
So what were the key focuses for you in that time period in terms of building that out? And also the company that acquired you in the end, did you have them in mind specifically? No?
Not specifically, no. I knew it'd be an agency. I didn't know it'd be them specifically, but I think the two key, and I know this from running an agency, that the sort of two challenges that agencies have is one, recurring revenue.
Yeah.
A lot of agencies are still project based, or agency, for example, a development agency will be a big chunky fee to build a website and then the client's gone. That's really hard from both a resourcing perspective but also cash flow. So they're looking to buy businesses that have recurring revenue so they can keep that going. So recurring revenue and talent, agencies struggle with talent because there's not enough of it.
Yeah.
And so I knew that I had to build a business where all of our customers were recurring revenue and we had a really solid team that were happy and motivated. And so that's all I set out to do. So every decision, should we take on this bit of work? Does it fit the criteria? Yes or no? No, nah, I'm not taking it. If we're hiring this person, do they fit into what somebody might want to buy one day? Yes or no? No, cool, we're not taking them. And that causes issues sometimes, and friction. But again, if you've got that sort of end goal in mind, and it's big enough and you can picture it and vision that, then you stay motivated to stick to your guns.
Well, and it's so hard though when you're building a business to knock back potential revenue, right? I mean, it's one of the hardest skills I think to learn, and I feel like for unless you have a very strong vision of what you're trying to do, for most entrepreneurs it's like, yeah, I'll have the right to be able to pick and choose a bit further down the line once I've got some more money in the bank. More often than not, that never comes. I think I see the commonality in entrepreneurs that do well, having this kind of clear vision at the start and being very focused to it, understanding the things that you can come and go on, but being hard and fast to the core principles of what it is you're doing.
Yeah, and that's I mentioned friction problems. We've had customers we've had to fire, and that's such a hard decision to make.
Yeah,
where you're customers paying you regularly. We had one, for example, that basically verbally abused our team, and even they did that to try to say no to consistent, good chunky revenue.
Yeah.
And say, sorry, we can't work with you anymore. It's really hard, but in that case I had to, because I can't let somebody speak to my team like that when I know that the team are one of the most valuable parts of the business.
Yeah. So
you have to make all these challenging decisions. But
and with a clear view, you can probably see very clearly that money that they're bringing into the business is not going to serve you in the long term. If you lose a key member of staff, when you think about the cost of replacing, getting up to speed, this guy doesn't work out, so I need to get another guy in, and that's just so much more damaging to the business in the long term versus a short term fee.
Yeah, and totally, and if it was a lifestyle business, then you could probably say that's fine, just keep them paying. And that member of staff might leave one day, but I'll get somebody else in the door and that'll be fine.
It's probably one of the downsides to our business model as it stands just now, because clients pay us for 12 months. They pay us in 12-month cycles, so it's like, if someone was paying you every month, you could just say, okay, well, this isn't working out, see you later, but they paid us 12 months up front with the expectation that we're going to deliver for that 12 months, so when it doesn't work out, it's a bit trickier, but still the same principle of, okay, I might have to refund the full 12 months, even though we've worked 6 months, but it's going to be more headache than it's worth in the long term.
Yeah, if you have to refund, it's harder.
Well, if you ever have to get into litigation with any former clients, you realise it is so much easier just to cut the cloth, send the refund, and get on with your fucking life, because that litigation stuff sucks the life out of you.
Oh yeah.
So fully on board with that. So, given the importance of your team, what was your kind of strategy for hiring, getting the right people on board?
So we went from myself to 12 people in 3 years, and the first hire I went through an agency. I was like, I'm never doing that again. Yeah. But recruitment agency, not for me.
Huge fee to pay. They're just trying to tick the box and get the fee.
Yeah, and then 6 months later, they're contacting that same person again, saying, I've got another role for you. You fancy coming? So recruitment agency, the first one, and then after that, it's just LinkedIn, to be honest. And trying to paint the picture of what joining a small growing team looks like. It's going to be messier than agencies you've been in the past. We might not have all the HR functions set up, but you know what, that actually comes with a lot of benefits too. So
it comes with a bit of flexibility that you're not going to get in these big corporate setups.
Yeah, so we don't have a HR function. Okay, there's some negatives there, but it also means that I'm not tracking your holidays very closely, so you can take a couple of days here and there. We might not have the highest salary, we're not paying the highest salary, but we're growing fast, and there's going to be opportunity for you to get into leadership roles faster than elsewhere. So it's really about trying to paint the benefits of joining a small, fast-growing team, and it worked really well. We got some great members of the team join us early on, and then from there it's mostly been referrals, because they've been in other agencies. And they could say, I've worked with this guy, he's good.
And there's nothing more powerful than that, because they are signing up to work with them, so they're not going to give you a bad referral. I think what's quite interesting, I think, as well about your business is you're not necessarily bound by parameters of geographic location, and that's a big thing, because that opens up a world of talent that most businesses just can't do.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, it's an interesting one actually, because on one hand, yes, we could hire anyone from anywhere, and we do have a guy, Casper, who's based in
Armenia.
We know Casper. Yeah. So he's a great guy. He's lived in Edinburgh. It's a long story on how we know him, but he lived in Edinburgh and moved up to Armenia. But everybody else is based in Scotland. So yes, we could work with anyone anywhere, but I remember having a conversation early on with somebody that was interested in buying us. This was really early on. And he said to me, one of the key things we'd be looking for is a team that's local, so they could come into the office. And that always stuck by me. Actually, transpires that probably wouldn't have actually mattered. But that always stuck by me on, right, well, we're going to try and build a team that's close enough. So yeah, we've got Glasgow, Edinburgh, Inverness, Livingston, Kinross. We're all over the place in Scotland, but we all come into the office for the office days. So that was an important thing for me. And again, that sort of takes us back to you're building to sell, you've got a vision in mind.
Yeah.
But yeah, looking back, it probably actually wouldn't have mattered where everybody was based. Probably if we'd gone for the UK, that might have been a little bit easier for us.
Was there any point along the journey of building Yatter where you thought you maybe weren't on the right track, or you had a massive challenge that just...
Every day. There's been, there's in the agency world, there's a sort of rule of thumb that you never want one single client to be, 25+% of your income.
Yeah.
And we've never had that, but we have had chunky clients. And when a chunky client leaves,
it's painful.
It's painful. And for whatever reason, it's always in buses. So always like big chunky client leaves, next day someone else leaves, and you're going, oh my word, I've got the usual concerns that you have as a business owner.
Yeah.
I've had days like that where you're sitting going, where's the money going to come from? What am I doing? And then next day you get up, drink your coffee, and you go again.
It's a funny thing, and it almost feels like some unwritten rule of the universe that you have to have these periods, and for us it's like we have an amazing month, and we know next month we're going to be just laden with shit to deal with, and it happens every time, but it still doesn't make it any easier to get through it. And probably the hardest thing for me, I think, in the last 12 months was we had our two best months last year were October and November, and then we went into December with the Christmas shutdown. It was a shit month. It's always going to be a shit month because you're like off half the month. But the problem for me was then I had to sit in the house for 2 weeks over the Christmas period, not able to fix it, not able to get back to work and fix it and get on with moving the business forward. Just sit and think about it for 2 weeks. It was fucking torture. And it's the first time I've experienced it, because the previous December wasn't the same. The model had shifted a little bit. I don't know how it landed, but last Christmas was just the Christmas before last was quite nice because we had 2 weeks off and everyone shuts down, it's quiet. But this was like, it was like I was in prison for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But it just seems to be some unwritten rule of it. And I think that's what a lot of people don't understand about entrepreneurship is you really have to get used to dealing with the highs and lows of it, and not be too affected by it. And for me, it's easier because we have a shit day, we come back in the next day, right? What are we focused on? What are we gonna? And as soon as you're dealing with the problem and moving forward, like all of that kind of worry and stress comes off you. But too many people bury their head and not deal with the big issues.
Yeah, nothing worse when you have to sit on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like if you've been on holiday and then you get a bad email and you just have to sit and try and enjoy the holiday, and but I think that's just the tax that you have to pay as being an entrepreneur. It's just you will. I don't think you'll ever get rid of that feeling. And so the thing that has helped me, to be honest, because the last few years have been the hardest I've ever had, going through the transaction of trying to sell, whilst trying to grow the business, whilst hiring, whilst having a daughter, all these different things, is that your hardest days are the ones that give you the most experience and make you a better business person. Yeah. Like the good days where you you feel like you've got a lot of money and whatnot. You don't learn anything in those days. But
No.
it's the crap, it's the people problems, all that sort of stuff. The one thing that I just remind myself is, this is my training.
Yep.
This is the only way that you're going to get better and become a bigger business person.
And out the other end, you feel like you've earned it because you've went through experiences that a lot of people, certainly anybody working 9 to 5, isn't going to ever experience and have to deal with.
Yeah.
And that's it's the flip side of having a life on your own terms and controlling your own future is, there's pluses and minuses to it, and there's a few kicking the nuts on the way. Yeah,
and you talk about the highs and lows. I've always thought about, that is what entrepreneurship is. It's massive highs and then crushing lows. And the key is being able to sort of soften those highs and lows, so you're just on this constant. You try and don't get affected by the good stuff, and you don't get affected by the bad stuff either. Cause
I mean, for me, I always try and relate any problem back to its monetary value, and that helps me just not be that affected by it.
Yeah.
It's like there's few monetary challenges we have day in, day out that's going to sink us, so it's probably going to be okay. So a lot of people think as well, when you've obviously built this business and gone through this journey with the intention of selling, and a lot of people assume kind of buyer comes along, shakes your hand on a deal, and then it's all sunshine and rainbows and you disappear into, but it's never like that, right? One, in terms of the time a deal can get take to get done, and two, in terms of your involvement on a continued basis with the company. So tell us a little bit about that. And
so it's it's really been a 3-year journey selling the business, but I would say 18 months maybe of hard graft actually selling the business. So it took a lot longer than I thought it would take. So we set up the business 3 years ago. We knew we were going to sell. About 1.5 years ago was when I was like, right, now is the time that we want to sell. And for a variety of different reasons, some of them personal, like having a daughter, but also, when I first set out the business, my goal is always to be the best. So, I set the business up going, how can we be the best paid advertising agency in the world? And how long might that take? So, work backwards. Best in the world, 10 years maybe. Best in the UK, maybe 5. Best in Scotland, maybe 2 to 3. So, we got to a point, 1.5 years ago, where I'm going, we're probably the best in Scotland, and I based that on things like reviews, amount that we manage, client happiness, various different factors. Okay, so how do we take the next leap to become the best in the UK? And obviously, selling to a larger agency who have similar values, similar goals, similar vision is a 10x move. So I often think about, there's a great book, 10x is easier than 2x.
Yeah.
And a 2x move is how can we grow 20% this year? A 10x is how do we double our profit this year? It requires different thinking. So selling...
Sorry, just to pick up on that, it's a massively important point that I think a lot of people just don't get, because it comes back to goal setting, and it's like, depending on the level of goal you set, most people are setting realistic goals that are within the normal aims of just continuing to do what you're doing, do it slightly better and get an incremental improvement. But there's very few people that think in terms of this 10x. And it was something that Laurie and I had at the start of our journey. In our first year together, we'd done 40 properties, and it's like, well, okay, that's good. How do we do 300 by next year?
Yeah.
And we had to completely rethink about, buying these single units and the way we were doing them was never going to work. We had to figure out how we were going to buy portfolios, and then we needed to find some big portfolios to buy.
Yep.
And 12 months later, we were at 200. We weren't at 300, but if we'd set incremental improvements, we'd have been at 50 or 60 versus where we landed.
Perfect example. Yeah. It's like you could have gone 40 in year one and gone, right, how can we get to 50 the next year, or 80, and you could have just carried on doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
But to double it, to go to 300, 400, it requires a completely different strategy. And that's, I think mergers and acquisitions from a business growth perspective for me is that 10x move is you can go from being a £2 million agency to a £4 million agency by buying another one, as opposed to 2 million growing to 4 million might take you 5-10 years. So anyway, I'm looking at how do we become the best in the UK. I know I want to sell, right? It feels like the right time to go about it. So we started working with an agency called Cactus, who are like an agency
for selling your business.
Yeah, I mean I'd worked with them for years before they had done M&A services, but they started doing M&A services, and they helped me sort of build the data room, get the business ready.
Yeah.
Found us potential buyers. We started having conversations with potential buyers.
Was the Cactus, because I mean we have a guy that we're talking to actually who consults on one of our clients' businesses called Mark Mills. He's written a book, a guy specialises in the same sort of thing as Cactus do. But do they work on a commission basis for the sale of the business, or is it like front end structure and fees and?
Yeah, they get 5%.
Okay.
Yeah, and there was a small retainer for the first period of work. But they were great. They got the business, helped me get the business in a position that it was, looking good. So building the one pager, building the deck, and then found all the buyers for us. So
it's incredible. I mean that truly is the kind of golden goose for entrepreneurs, is learning how to build it, structure it, sell it. So incredible to have been through that journey from start to finish. What is your plans going forward? So you're still involved in the business just now?
Yeah, I'm still involved. I'm involved for the foreseeable, really, to ensure that there's a seamless transition. So I said to the guys, the Velstar, when we're doing this deal, like the key thing for me is making sure that the team are looked after, they're happy. And actually, to be honest, going back to finding talent, one of the key things that I did from the start was all of our benefits were statutory.
Yeah.
The reason being is I didn't want somebody to come and buy us that then had worse benefits to the team. So they're getting great stuff like private healthcare insurance and all that, which they didn't have before.
A lot of benefits.
So it's great. And that was it was a big factor for me, which is again going back to what building the team in the early days is trying to paint that picture of what we're trying to build something, and it was important for me to build the business and sell it to somebody else that's going to give the team more opportunities. So, there's higher staff count, there's more benefits, there's more career progression opportunities for them. So that's all great, and I can't remember what the question was. But
really just what's next for you, whether or not, I guess, is there any retained interest in either Yatter or the acquiring company? Is there still a level of involvement for you there, or is it on to the next?
Yeah, so I'm like I say, I'm there for the foreseeable, I guess, until they think that my job is done and they can take over it. And then my plan after that, to be honest, is just take a bit of time off. It's been a brutal 3 years, sort of like coming out of a war wounds on. So I'm going to take a bit of time off, and then I will definitely be going and building something else. I don't know what that something else is yet, so I'm sort of annoying everybody at the moment, just asking people what's the biggest problem that you've got in your life at the moment.
Yeah.
And I think there'll be something in. So I want to solve a big problem that people have, and in a business where it's one, pandemic proof. I've learned that one. AI proof. Yeah. Because that's going to take so many jobs.
Yeah, and I guess I was going there at some point, but we can come back to that.
Yeah, and the last one is recession proof.
Yeah.
So, I'm just at the moment just spending time researching trends and speaking to people, and I've got that almost like fire in my belly back from the early days of starting Yatter, where it's fresh plate.
I can imagine it being quite a freeing experience to know that the business is sold, and whilst you're still managing to make sure there's a smooth transition, not having that same level of responsibility as the owner where it's all on your shoulders, to be free of that and think, I've got a clean piece of paper here to start again. I mean, that's a good place to be.
Yeah, it's exciting, but it's also daunting.
Yeah.
So it's exciting because you go, this is amazing, I've got an opportunity to build and create something again from scratch. And then you realise you don't have any income and you're like, oh, right.
Yeah, best get to that.
Yeah.
And it's just about, you know, having that time to breathe and think logically about, right, what is the right steps.
You know, and,
not only for you, but you know, your world's changed now as well. You've got a young daughter, you say, so you know, and this is a conversation that, you know, I'm fortunate enough that I've got two business partners, Laurie and Connor. It's not all on me, but it'd be incredibly difficult because we've all got young families, and between the three of us it works. But the reality is, anytime we're thinking about having a new arm to the business, or you know, really putting focus into a significant area of growth in the business, we always bring it back to the fact that we're not 21-year-old entrepreneurs that don't have families that can work 8 hours a week. We just don't, you know, so it always has to be kind of practical within, you know, what we can put into it. And I think that's something that in the last couple of years we've been a bit naive to. We've tried to do a bit too much, but we're getting a lot more kind of focused on, and that's the value of it. You know, if you only have limited time, you really need to focus and be quite aggressive on what's value added and what's not.
Yeah, it's a filter, isn't it? It's something I've had to learn since Sophie, she's 18 months, and I still find myself trying to pack my days filled with as much work as I used to do when I could work all day and all night if I wanted to, and now that's just not the case. So I still have to try and, you know, not even to mention the lack of sleep, you know, like energy levels. So trying to
so tough.
Trying to balance all of that, and also, you know, just generally feeling bad about leaving the office early sometimes, or coming into the office late because you've had to do nursery pick up or drop off. All these little things, you know, I'm still trying to get used to. So there's an element of, with a new business, it's quite nice because there's no expectations around how Gav acts or how Gav, you know, leads the business. I can kind of create it from the ground up and how I like it, and how my life needs it to be.
I guess you're starting out with a clear fundamental understanding of where your strengths lie in building a business, which kind of will filter out naturally quite a lot of potential business opportunities. You know, for the biggest learning for us so far is that, you know, we are quite service driven. You know, our skills complement service driven types of businesses. The construction business did not work because that's not our skill set, and we won't touch anything like that again. You know, so you know, you're always learning, but you know, I think that will help you naturally kind of narrow down the options. Yeah,
and again, coming back to what's the end goal. So for me, the next business, I want to scale up to 100 million. That's the target I've got. And so now I look at, well, what does the 100 million pound version of X business look like? You know, so one of the things, we've done house renovations in the past, and tradespeople, you know, do my head in. And so I've always gone, I'd love to, you know, create a plumbing firm and grow that. But I go, a 100 million pound version of plumbing firm, that's a lot of tradies that you need to hire and deal with. No, I don't fancy that. So
I think you have to understand as well that the type of people you're going to be dealing with in terms of staff is very different to your office technical guys compared to these guys that are working, you know, as tradesmen on the floor. Our experience of it is, as soon as you hire a tradesman and they're on a salary, the guys that want to go on a salary just want an easy life. They don't want it. They're not motivated. They want to turn up at the work when they feel like it. They want to do as little work as possible, and they want a paycheck at the end of the week. The tradesmen that are really good and really driven, they work for themselves. They can get through twice as much work as this guy, and they're getting all the benefit of it financially. So, you know, our business has massively improved in terms of our refurbs, our conversion projects, since we've went to external subcontractors, and most of it is just like local subcontractors that we use. Costs are way down compared to when we had it, the building company. So for me, getting into that sort of business where, you know, there's tradespeople involved, and that this isn't me being derogatory about tradespeople, because there's some amazing people out there that do a great job. All my experience is the guys that want to take a job rather than making their own living are the ones that just aren't motivated to do the work.
Yeah,
you know.
100%. I mean,
That's not to say though. I mean, there's some guys that have made incredible amounts of money. I can't remember the name of the guy, but big plumbing agency down in.
Pinnacle, plumbers.
Yeah, yeah.
Charlie Mullins.
And it's kind of higher end stuff, but you know, he makes sure his guys are all turned out really well and they're going into nice houses and make people feel, but you know, high revenue generating. They're going to charge a lot more than your standard plumber, but they're providing the service to the right people. I get that model.
Yeah.
I still think the guys that make a success of that really understand the trade inside out.
Yeah, and then that's it. It's like, you know, there's so many problems out there and so many that I'd love to go and fix, but having that filter of what I want my life to look like and what I want to achieve, because I've got that end picture and goal, it creates a really nice filter to just go, actually no. As much as I'd love being an entrepreneur, you want to solve every problem you can. Yeah. But that doesn't mean you should solve every problem.
100%. You're not thinking about AI as an, you know, you say huge displacement of jobs potentially. Yeah. You can see the advancement of the capabilities of it, and we're just touching the tip of the iceberg, you know. Yeah. So
I'm thinking about it. I think my skill set probably better placed in an industry, maybe more of a traditional industry that can be improved by AI, as opposed to, you know, going and launching an AI startup. So I quite like the idea of, well, take Yatter for example. You know, like we're starting to try and use a lot of AI in what we're doing to improve process and make it better and be able to provide a better service and competition. Yeah. So I like the idea of going into a traditional industry where the competitors aren't using AI, but launching an AI startup, I don't think that's for me.
No, I think that's where my head goes with AI as well. You know, you're seeing a lot of businesses that are call centre driven, that, you know, that there will be a path to becoming heavily dependent on AI. Yeah. You know, even in our own sales process, we're trying to say, you know, we're trying to find reasons why AI couldn't do the job of a lot of the sales process that we have. And ultimately, you know, most of the excuses, you know, they're not real, because, you know, at the end of the day, you have to train an individual to do it. And you're not telling me something that has the potential to be infinitely smarter than a human won't be able to do it, you know, and do it better. So it's just a case of understanding when the right time's there, because you don't really want to be a first adopter with this stuff. You want to be a bit further down the line, but you also want to be on the crest of the wave. So, you know, we're having those types of discussions just now, but for us, we have to get our head into it.
Yeah. Oh, there's no. I mean, if you don't, your competitors will, and you're going to fall behind. As simple as that.
Yeah, 100%. So it's been a pleasure talking to you. Don't want to take up too much more of your time, but the last question I always ask is, what does real wealth mean to you?
For me, it's a case of having enough cash and assets where you don't have to worry about work, money, time. It's for me personally, it's actually a case of, if I've got enough cash in the bank that's earning enough cash flow from interest alone to pay for everything that I want to pay for, then
I think the Americans call that fuck you money. So nobody can ever determine what you have to do or spend your time on.
Yeah, exactly that. So that's what I'm trying to build.
Yeah, cool, awesome. Thanks a lot for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
This has been the Real Wealth Podcast. I'm Alex Robertson, and thanks for joining us on this wealth journey.